Welcome to the Trawl-Free Table podcast from Fish Alaska magazine, and proudly sponsored by Salmon State and the Kannery Restaurant in Homer. I'm Melissa Norris, publisher of Fish Alaska and Hunt Alaska magazines. This series expands on our magazine column, The Trawl-Free Table, an effort to inform and spark honest dialogue about how industrial trawling affects Alaska's fisheries, communities, and ecosystems. We look beyond the labels to examine seafood certification systems, management practices, and the choices we can make as consumers to keep oceans thriving. In this episode of the Trawl-Free Table podcast, I'm joined by Chris Miller, one of the owners of the Kannery Restaurant in Homer, Alaska's first notable restaurant to proudly carry the trawl-free designation on their menu. We'll explore what that means, why it matters, and the complexities behind sustainability labels like those designated by the Marine Stewardship Council, the MSC. And at the end of all this, if you're inspired to get involved in the growing trawl-free table movement, we'll tell you how to do that too. Chris, welcome. Thank you so much for being here and for sponsoring this joint effort. How are things down in Homer today?
Very quiet. Yep. Slowed down from the summer. There's a frost in the air, termination dust on the mountains, and nice quiet town.
Yeah, far different from the cries of people that were there just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, good summer. Another good summer for Homer. There was some good fishing done actually. Right out, we saw salmon boats filling up literally in Ketchimack Bay, right outside the harbor and turning right around. So, yeah,
fantastic.
Good season for all. Yeah,
excellent. So as I stated, the Kannery is Alaska's first notable restaurant to carry the trawl-free designation. But before we get into what inspired you to go trawl-free, can you tell us about the Kannery?
Yeah, the Kannery, we've been me and Cody Fry, my business partner, have been here. We're going into our 5th year. So next year's our 5th summer. This is our 4th winter. So we opened on May of 2022. We kind of brought like a fusion-based restaurant. In Homer, you kind of have to be all about the seafood. A funny story, we originally came out of the gate with no fish and chips on our menu because fish and chips is literally on every menu in all of Alaska, probably, which blew up in our face, and we actually had people getting up and walking out, and we were finally like, all right, we'll put fish and chips on the menu. We're very focused on using all local ingredients. We're very focused on kind of bringing in fresh new ideas to the area. We have a craft cocktail bar that kind of pushes the limits of creation with local ingredients as well. It's very open. We kind of overlook the mouth of Ketchimack Bay, so right where the Cook Inlet's parts, and we got the Ketchimack Bay turning off into Homer, so we're before the spit. We're right in town as you get into town. Our logo is a buoy. The buoy is the green can, the number 5 that marked Homer Harbor, the entrance to Homer Harbor, kind of a sign of safety. So we've kind of mimicked that in the mouth of town, if you would.
Fantastic. I love that. You guys have live music there too sometimes, yeah?
We do. We have a piano player, Johnny B, who plays every Friday all year long, and then we do a lot of local music coming in and out of both seasons, but in the summertime it's really go times. The rest of the music, if we can fit you in a corner, we'll let you play some music in the summer, but in the winter we open it up a little bit more. Yeah,
it's a different vibe, summer versus winter. Yeah,
it is a completely different vibe. It's a challenge. It's a vibe change. It's a lot. Our food changes drastically going into winter, obviously, because most Alaskans here have freezers full of halibut and salmon and tanner crab that they can go out and catch. And so we have to make a pretty drastic change right after the festival, really. So like first week, right after Labor Day, it changes very quickly here. And then we have a lot of the snowbirds that hang out here until, the end of October, but it's a pretty drastic change very quickly here. So we change our menu every October, and then we do another change in January, and then we do our summer change in May. So we do 3 food change a year.
Oh, I imagine the locals can't wait till the visitors have gone so they can get in there.
Yeah, no, it's a little, yeah, definitely we see some of that, and they have that short window to get that summer menu. They have September, and then we go into more of like warmer, winter menu. Right now our menu is kind of like Northern European chop house vibe going on right
All
now.
right. I like it.
So yeah, no, it's good. We like to change it up. When we opened, we did bao buns and had a very Pan Asian vibe. So we're all about changing. Like, people that know
That's
us
great.
are pretty used to the changing that we like to go through.
So before we get into the details of what being a troll-free restaurant actually means, can you share about your background and sort of how it led up to this moment?
Yeah, my background. Well, my background started, I mean, I was in the restaurant business my whole life. My dad was a hotel restaurant manager for 32 years. And so I kind of grew up in hotels, some restaurants. He was never really in the kitchen. So I really inspired to like become in the kitchen and become, top of the class, whatever you would like to call it. And so I started working in kitchens at 15. I mentored underneath Zach Calkins, who taught me a ton, and I kind of moved around with him to a bunch of different restaurants, and then ended up meeting my wife and starting to have kids. Then I went to Whole Foods, where I spent 15 years, 16 years with Whole Foods in the seafood regional kind of production area. And
Interesting.
then when Amazon bought them, I made the decision to skedaddle and got an executive chef job at the Land's End here in Homer. And then 4 years later, we had the cannery opened. Yeah.
So was there a pivotal moment that made you decide to source your seafood for the restaurant with intention?
Oh yeah. Well, right out of the gate, we were doing that at Land's End. I got off the plane with the intention. Whole Foods taught me a
Oh,
lot about sustainability, and how it should be done and what we thought was right. And then, the story envelops with Whole Foods. When I got here, I kind of figured out a lot of the things that I had been taught were that was even wrong. So we had a little bit more of a relearning curve when we got here to Alaska, but we came out of the gate with our first menu at Land's End with making it as sustainable as possible. And from that day on, we kind of learned a lot. So when we got to the cannery, we were already full swing coming out of Land's End doing that. And then Land's End, the canneries were really where we started pushing the trawl free. We really kind of,
yes.
by that time, we had enough education behind us to be like, all right, this is a big issue here, and we definitely need to put some focus on it.
So for the listeners who might not know what being a trawl-free restaurant means in practical terms, like what does that truly mean beyond the label that you have on your menu?
Yeah, so we actually created a label for a trawl-free restaurant. It's tough because, with the trawling is situation, you definitely have a lot of different trawling that is worse than others. So, but to call
Mm,
yourself trawl-free, you have to stand behind that term, and that means most shrimp, scallops. Like, there's a lot of things, sardines, anchovy. There's a lot of things that you wouldn't think of in the trawl world, because most people, when we're talking about deep water trawling or middle water trawling in the Bering Sea, we're going after pollock and all these other, mostly pollock, but all these other flatfishes. And so you don't think about all the rest of the trawling that happens across the globe. Most shrimp, all shrimp is trawled. It's just a different, it's a smaller scale in some senses.
yeah.
So, but to walk the walk, you have to walk the walk. So we got rid of all of it. But, those are the biggest things to hit on a regular menu would be wild shrimp. Any wild shrimp other than spot prawns in Alaska are going to be trawled. Side stripes in Alaska, those are trawled. Spot prawns are pot caught. Not all of them, but the ones we
Mhm.
use are all pot caught.
Excellent. Excellent. So, do your diners, the folks that come in there all the time, generally understand the difference between trawl caught and non trawl caught?
No, I think most of them don't, especially in the summer, because the messaging down in the 48 is just different. You go to Whole Foods and the pollock it's sustainable, and that's what they call. They're not looking at the bycatch, and that's not part of what the MSC and how everyone else is ranking things. It's a blinded in that sense. So most of them they don't understand it. They they come here, and by the time they leave, if they're interested and they ask the right questions, we definitely will educate, and the servers know about it. We have tons of documentary at the front thanks to Salmon State. And yeah, they've definitely outfitted us with all the kind of pass out material that we've needed.
Excellent.
They're a great partner. Yeah, so hopefully they do leave a little bit more educated, for sure.
Excellent. So you folks, you don't cram it down their throat, so to speak. It's
We
there
don't, no.
subtly for them to pick up, and if they have questions,
Yeah,
everyone
we have it
is
on our yeah, we have it on our hats, we have it on our stuff. We definitely have it out there and we're ready to talk about it, but we
right.
definitely don't we don't that being in the hospitality, that's not the first step, it's taking care of them, letting them have their moment, and if they ask, we're ready to talk.
Yeah, yeah. I fully understand that in my arena as well. Your
Yeah.
restaurant is committed to highlighting local ingredients, working with local partners, and serving only sustainably sourced seafood. Let's talk about how you source your seafood. You've shared with me that you try to work with local fishermen and Homer first. Who are some of those key players?
Yeah, well, in the summertime, it's a little bit different, but Ketchimack Bay Seafoods is a big part of our halibut, at least in the halibut world, and he is a gentleman, Billy Sullivan, that he buys off of numerous local boats coming in and out of the Homer Harbor, and he processes down there on the harbor, and then he delivers straight to us. You can't get much better than that in
Yeah.
the sustainability realm. A lot of the halibut fishermen over here, they have a smidge of bycatch, and it's mostly rockfish, and they're allotted a certain amount, so really nothing really goes to waste. Nothing's getting thrown overboard in that sense. And then we use Pat with Seafoods of Alaska to get a lot of our frozen items, our items. He does mostly all of our spot prawns, which is a big part of our menu because of the shrimp and grits, and that is the one shrimp we do use year round. And he also provides stuff like rockfish and crab meats and red crab, and he's kind of that whole realm of it, and he's actually my neighbor as well, so that usually helps. The closer you can work with, locally smaller businesses, the easier it is to trace stuff, obviously. So, and then we also work with Citizen Salmon. He delivers most of our salmon throughout the summer, and he again is buying off of boats locally here in Homer. And we do get some halibut in back and forth with him. He does all of our black cod, smoked black cod, and he's sourcing mostly all of that either through himself or through Pat again. So it's a tight little ring we have down here. But those are the three main people that we use.
Excellent, excellent. Oh, there's so much value in that, Chris, beyond helping out your neighbor, buying locally,
Yeah, right.
the sustainability of it all, and the footprint you're not putting out there to transport goods from around the
Yeah.
world to your restaurant is it's enormous.
Yeah, I mean, the craziest part of that is in the middle of the summer when the produce is happening, because most produce coming out of distribution is coming from the lower 48, and we supplement a lot of our produce in the summer through local farms. That's a big win because we're talking about a big carbon footprint on a case of broccoli, right?
Right. Yeah. All over the world every day. It's part of the problem. I mean, it might be at the
Yeah,
core of the problem.
definitely.
Yeah. Are
Yeah.
there certain species you won't ever serve or can only serve on occasion because of how they're harvested?
Well, scallops, most all scallops are trawl caught, which is a bummer. It's one of my favorites. It always has been.
Mine too.
But yeah, yeah. Actually, though, we did find a diver scallop out of Japan that we did bring in this summer, and we ran a special with those. They're a little bit on the pricier side, but it's like a half farm raised, so they're diving down and they're setting them up, and then they go back down and harvest them. So it's a very cool product. That's actually how they catch some of the crab in Norway, is by free diving
Cool.
down in suits underneath the ice and sending crabs back up top. So there's a lot of really unique ways to do things.
Interesting. Okay, so we've talked about how you've sourced locally, how you've brought in some trawl-free items that are rare and more expensive, but beautiful. What are the hardest parts of sourcing the trawl-free?
Well, is making sure that your stuff is trawl free, because we almost had a major accident last year when we brought on a Caesar salad, which we needed anchovies for. Chef brought in the anchovies. I didn't catch it right away, and then I was like, wait, we can't use those anchovies. So really making sure that you think about all of it. We actually ended up replacing the anchovy with sustainable anchovy by Wild Planet. And then after that, we actually figured out how to use seaweed, locally harvest seaweed, in replace of any anchovy, and it really worked out very well. But keeping up on that, the rockfish as well is a really tight game to play, because a shatter packed rockfish to IQF rockfish or a fresh rockfish, shatter packs coming off a trawl vessel, that is one of the things that they can package up and keep, and certain ones of them can. So we have to make sure that, our chefs are ordering from the right source, because if you order from the wrong source, you could get a shatter pack in, and then all of a sudden you have trawl rockfish in your freezer.
Yeah.
Happened almost once. We caught it, we sent it back. But that's really
Diligent.
yeah, that's really the biggest challenge, is keeping up on it and making sure you know who you're buying from, and when the stuff comes in the back door, they're not mispicking you, they're not sending something that's wrong, because a lot of times you can get the same thing and one's trawl caught and one's not. It's kind of crazy that way.
Yeah. I'm learning
Yeah.
more about that. I just had that same Caesar salad aha moment as you did the other day with the anchovies. And I also discovered Wild Planet. Go Wild Planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good to see. So in
Mhm.
general, what kind of changes would you like to see in Alaska's restaurant industry around sourcing and transparency?
That's tough. I mean, in the seafood world, it's just we need to get the factory trawling done. So like everyone needs to get behind that. It's affecting sports fishing. It's affecting everything. I think
You said it.
more so than any of the other issues that are affecting things. But that debate can be had. So I think banning pollock because the craziest thing is most of that money doesn't even come back into Alaska. So really starting to focus with smaller fleet fishermen that are bringing stuff in sustainably, as sustainable as possible, at least. The produce thing is another thing I think is big in the restaurant business in Alaska right now. Is like the restaurant business has changed dramatically since COVID, obviously, and everyone's trying to figure out how to survive in the new world of restaurant. Cutting corners is definitely the easiest way, and getting the cheapest possible large brand name item from your distributor that you could possibly get, and selling it at a higher dollar, and just put, is the obvious answer. And I would implore all other restaurants to not do that, and figure out how to keep the food fresh and keep the food quality, and support the local people, because a lot of times you might be able to find produce cheaper than bringing it from California. So just spending the extra time to do it, I guess, would be what I'd want.
Love it. So
Yeah.
behind you there, I see a pretty rad a wall hanging. So you're part
Year one.
a few. I see a little. I see a little merch.
I was gonna be out in the restaurant, but it's very echoey out there, so I moved back to what we call the war room, that's
Okay.
where we are currently.
Well, that works great, because it leads into my next question, that you're partners in an electronic music festival called the Sacred Acre, held in September each year. Can you share more about that event and the purpose behind it?
Yeah. Sacred Acre is a 3-day electronic music festival held in Ninilchik, Alaska. We're the weekend after Labor Day every year. We need to do it at that time of year because we need as much dark as we want. We're also really trying to not stress the infrastructure of Alaska during its peak moments. We're actually trying to spread some tourism out. So we are a destination festival. We offer helicopter rides to glaciers, helicopter rides to see bears. We offer spear fishing for halibut. The most sustainable form of fishing on the planet is spear fishing. You can book a charter, get a ride from the festival to the boat, go and spearfish for halibut, and be back for main stage sets. We also do foraging lessons. We have a program called the Stillwater, which does ecstatic dancing, yoga, breath work, kind of just wellness, overall kind of mind wellness and physical wellness. Yeah, and the whole Sacred Acre comes from a storyline by a man named Ivo Dominguez, and it's the magical land in between low tide and high tide. And we celebrate the creatures that come from both ocean and land. And it's about taking, in this story, he talks about taking a pilgrimage once a year to get back in tune with your sea self and your land self. And so we kind of bring that all together in what we did in this festival. we're a mission-based festival, and our number one goal right now is to raise awareness on trawling of the Bering Sea and bring an end to it, bring awareness to it, and stop the consumerism of it. We have multiple partners now. We have, obviously, Salmon State's been with us for quite some time. We have Oceana with us now. We do speeches from stage. We have workshops more. We have to get better at it. We're really good at throwing a festival, but getting the TED Talkie stuff worked in, is always a challenge because there's so many moving parts. But
Sure.
it's something that we get better at every year. And we really want that to be part of it, and that to move into almost the Stillwater side of things. And someday when we're pushing this thing into a financial machine, we will be donating proceeds to different projects. Project Orca is one that we've been wanting to work on with Salmon State for quite some time. And that's just getting out into the Bering Sea and watching all this happen and getting footage from under the
Mm,
water, from
mm.
the air. And that's something that we at Sacred Acres, we thrive very well with, is media and making videos and making content. And that's just, we feel it's a way that we can mostly impact
Yeah.
people's consumerism, is by getting content in front of them on social media platforms and other places. So we're really pushed on that. We're also really about just connecting human beings. We feel that through connecting people in the right way, giving them that space to kind of be open, that we can talk on an open platform on how we can go back to regular life and infect change. And that's essentially what we need to do, is affect change in everything that we do, so that we're not, being so wasteful, because we're a pretty wasteful species at this point.
Yeah, but at least a few of us have our eyes open. I love to see that. That's a fantastic
Yeah.
story about the festival. You're really doing a lot. I appreciate it so much.
I urge everyone to check it out. It is a spectacle for sure. And it's, in the woods of Alaska, unlike any other festival.
Well, I'll be looking forward to sharing more information with our viewers about your festival over the coming years too, and checking it
Yeah.
out. So you've come from Whole Foods to head chef, executive chef, to running restaurants and festivals and gallivanting all over the world. Have you noticed a growing awareness or demand for sustainable seafood over time?
Oh yeah. I mean, for my years at Whole Foods, I was blown away by the amount of people that want to do the right thing, but they don't know what the right thing is. And then,
Hmm.
I love Whole Foods, and they taught me a lot, but I mean, the sustainability sources that they use at Whole Foods, which I've found since I've been up in Alaska, the MSC, the Monterey Bay Aquarium, they are at fault too for doing the same thing. They are just as money generated as everything else out there, and they're selling certifications they shouldn't be selling, and they're backing fisheries that aren't being sustainable. And it's like the first time when I got to Alaska and I asked someone in the fish business what the MSC is, and they go, what, the who? And it's like, that's when it started to my eyes slowly started to get open to, like, I've been telling some lies. We need to write these lies. And that's why we're so gung ho on the trawling thing for the restaurant. And for that, it's one glaring blemish the MSC has, is they're marking that as sustainable, and it's clearly not. When you talk to smaller fishermen and how their interactions with the Monterey Bay Aquarium and the MSC, you can really start to see the cracks in the wall of how, I'm going to say the word, corrupt these sustainability markings can be, and how misguiding they are for the American public, for the consumer of Walmarts and Kroger's and Whole Foods and all the places that are telling them something that isn't just the right. It's just not the right. It's just not guided right. So,
Well,
yeah.
and I'm highly concerned with how involved they are in the process. I think I mentioned to you that I
Right.
was reading about a program called RFM, it stands for Responsible Fisheries Management, and it was
Yeah.
established by the Alaska Seafood Marketing Institute
Right.
with the Alaska seafood industry in 2010. And
Yeah.
then 10 years later, it got turned over to a nonprofit that is now known as CSI. And all of the Alaska seafood on there, including pollock, is listed. And they're
Yeah.
talking about that they list in their criteria that fishing method is considered and is it sustainable, and they're labeling it yes.
Yeah. Right.
There's
Yeah.
just
It's mind blowing.
mind blowing.
Yeah, well, And it is, and it's all for that bottom line dollar for the big fishery companies and the big grocery companies. I mean, that's really the reason, because pollock can be caught without using those boats. Anything can be caught without using boats. It's just going to cost more money. Also create more
Yes.
jobs, though.
Yes.
So we do have that. So,
and again, if we're not shipping it
a
around
lot
the
of,
world,
yeah. Well, and a lot of these boats up here doing this now, they all originated in Massachusetts, where they collapsed an ecosystem over there. They know exactly what they're doing. They're not dumb to that. They know exactly what's going on and what they're doing out there right now. That's why the fishermen that work on there are treated the way they are, and they have NDAs, and they can't, a couple of the guys that release the footage, they lose their jobs. I mean, the amount of orcas they killed in 2023, I think it was almost a whole pod. If you look at the pod size and how many they took in 1 year, like they almost took a whole pod. I mean, not saying they took a whole pod, but numbers wise, it's very sad. It's very sad, and it's all for a fish sandwich at McDonald's or a fish stick from the freezer section.
Well, and the worst culprit might be that surimi garbage they're serving at the sushi restaurants, because the way that is processed alone, and the other things in it is just, ugh. I did misspeak. I do need to correct myself. I called it the program called RFM. It is in fact RSM, Responsible Seafood Management, that was originated by ASME. But I just wanted to clarify that, so I wasn't misspeaking. Yeah.
Well, and I'll admit to something. When I worked for Whole Foods in my first few years there, I was running these production programs, and I was like, you know what this place is missing? A good crab salad, one of those fake crab salads you get in all the other grocery stores. So I came up with a recipe, and we put it on the shelf, and then it was region wide in the Rocky Mountain region. So oops.
Okay.
I didn't know.
Well, a lot of people don't, Chris. A lot of people don't know that what they're eating is trash. And that it's harming entire ecosystems and making it so people can't get quality fish in their own backyard, which is, sort of why we all live here. Yeah. It's a tragedy.
Well, and I think that a lot of people will argue the fact that the pollock industry, feeds millions of people across the globe, and I mean, they're not wrong, but it's just another, something when you get to Alaska. When I got to Homer and I started coming up with crazy ideas, people were like, oh, you can't do that. And I was like, why can't we do that? And they're like, oh, you're in Homer. I'm like, what do you mean we're in Homer? Well, you're at the end of the road. You're not gonna be able to get it here, first of all. And I'm like, guys, we're still on planet Earth. So I think we could figure it out. And that's the same mentality that we're talking about, that they themselves, and we won't say names, but they will say, well, we have to be able to catch this food to keep it cheap so we can feed the millions. And no, you don't have to. It's the same reason, like the pile of with the cowboy standing on top of the buffalo skulls. You didn't have to kill all those buffalo. You did it to take food away from your, anyway, it's just another cop out of it has to be done that way to keep it cheap so people can afford it. Okay, so you don't make as much money. That's what it is. I mean, it's at the restaurant. At the restaurant here, we make decisions that affect our bottom line all the time in a negative way, but it's the right way. It's the right decision to do. So you just do it as the leader. Correct.
Yeah.
So
agreed. I was going to make the point that with all of that feeding the world, they still have to take that fish and process it, the living hell out of it, to make it taste like something you want to eat, and it's still garbage.
Right. Yeah.
And we all know
that is right.
We all know that the food industry, many of them are trying to do right by us, but many of them are in it for other purposes, right? Right.
But
So we're working. I want to say that myself and a handful of other folks responsible for creating awareness on this topic are working to create a list of known trawl-free businesses, trawl-free products, just putting it out there to try to make things easier for people. There's also the Seafood Watch list online that's you can kind of learn how it's caught and levels of its sustainability. Chris, if you could deliver one message to Alaskans about seafood and sustainability, what would it be?
I think we're all on the same boat with the fishing industry in Alaska, and that's like we just need to stop the trawling. That's it. Like and then tighten up the boats everywhere else, but it's like ripping a Band-Aid off. Yeah, it's going to hurt. There's a lot of talk about if the trawlers aren't out in the Bering Sea bringing in the pollock, then all the processing plants and all that support will disappear out in Dutch Harbor and all of that. But it's a Band-Aid like no other Band-Aid, and it's going to hurt at first, and humans will always adapt and grow through it. So rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah. And really, if we don't, we're in for a much larger long-term problem.
Yeah, because if people can't come to Homer to fish for halibut, it's a beautiful place to visit. But the tourism of Alaska is largely dependent on sports fishing, and
Yes,
it's affecting that. It's affecting it already. We saw 2 no fish days last year, so we're moving in that direction. We're moving in the direction of there not being anything left.
Well, yeah, we've got a best chance we have is to make change with our choices, educating other people, right?
Yep.
And you're doing
education
that. And
ask the questions and take the chances and rip the Band-Aids off. It only stings for a minute.